papers you've been working on. Or at least you should be working on. Remember, you can also bring them to me. I can take a look at them, give you feedback, and you can rewrite them as many times as you want until you get the grade on it. Let's see, the number of points that you need. Remember also that if you do both of those papers and average at least 3, you can skip the final exam. So that's all the more reason to do them. After the midterm, I will be talking with you about your grades, individually, one-on-one. And if you're struggling in the class and you did not do that first paper, you are going to have me yell at you. Okay, so what happens if you don't do the paper? But you're crazy if you don't do it, because it's just bumping your score up and it gives you a chance to skip the final so you can focus on something more difficult, like your calculus final. Okay, so just a word to the rise. Any questions on that stuff? Either on the paper. I should start talking about midterm a little bit so you start thinking about it. The midterm is a big deal. It's not like these little quizzes. You can blow a couple of those and it's not a big deal. You cannot afford to blow the midterm. So I am going to spend a lot of time getting you ready for it. 2, all the stuff we've already covered is going to be back on that midterm. 3, I'll have the TA conduct review sessions if you're interested. They're not mandatory. But if you need the extra help getting ready for the midterm, that'll be available. I've asked him to give me some times when he's available. And 4, you've got a number of choices on how you do the midterm. There's 3 of them. You can do it as a take-home, in which you're going to write about 8 to 10 typed double-spaced pages. There are 5 questions that you must answer. That take-home has been on Blackboard since the beginning of class. Take a look at it, see if you feel comfortable thinking about doing it. I wouldn't advise doing that take-home unless 2 things. 1, you're pretty comfortable with the theoretical ideas. You know, functionalism, conflict theory, symbolic interactionism, sociobiological explanations, that kind of stuff. Because in a take-home, I have to focus on the main concepts. And the main things that show up over and over again in every chapter is functionalism, conflict theory, symbolic interactionism, all that kind of stuff. So don't do it unless you feel comfortable with those concepts. And second, please don't do it unless you write fairly well. The tragic thing for both of us is for me to take a look at a midterm and I can't understand what you're talking about because I can't give you credit for it. Usually if you do a other form of the midterm, at least you're getting 40-50%, but I've had people get 15% on a midterm, a take-home, because I can't understand what they said. Okay, so those 2 provisions. The second choice, and this is the one most commonly taken by people, is to do an all multiple choice midterm. There'll be 100 questions. The only thing that happens in class 2 weeks from today is that midterm. You come to class, I'm going to start you promptly at 8 o'clock. Well, what'll happen, it'll do a last-minute review for the midterm like I always do. And then you'll have whatever remaining time to do your midterm. 100 multiple choice questions. It'll look like a really long version of the little quizzes you've been taking so far. And that's pretty much why most people do it. It's always, most folks, it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. That is, you've been doing that kind of test. Most of you are doing fairly well. This last quiz is the highest scoring quiz I've seen in this class, or any of my intro classes this semester. The average is about 82-83%. It's almost a full letter grade higher than normal. Less theory, more stuff on the basics. If you knew those basic scientific concepts, you did pretty well. If you knew culture, that stuff is pretty simple and straightforward. What's a norm? That kind of thing. Then you did pretty well. So if you feel comfortable with what you've been doing so far, then often the multiple choice version is a good idea as well. And then finally, you can do it as a half multiple choice, half short answer. Very few people choose that option, but that's available as well. All right, 3 choices in terms of how you do the midterm. What I'm trying to do is accommodate every individual's background. No, that means you choose as an individual, not as a class. Some people write well, some people don't. Some people stress out in a high-stakes test and they over-interpret. You know, things like, you use the word the. What do you mean by the? You know, that kind of stuff. And I've had both. I've had students who've been doing poorly on these little quizzes because they overinterpret, who do the take-home. Less pressured, but you got to know what you're talking about, and you got to write well. And they've done much. I've had people gone from a C minus, D plus kind of thing to an A on a take-home. But often it's the other way around. I mean, oftentimes I'll get people who do a take-home because they think it's easier than doing the in class because they get to use their books. No, that's a disaster. And it's usually not the people sitting here right now. It's the people who aren't sitting here because they're at the beach, because they're high, because they're recovering from last night and they're still at home. And they think, okay, I'm not coming to class, I'm not really getting this stuff. No, take home, you really need to know your stuff. Okay, so again, you choose as an individual. Any questions at this point about that serious exam coming up? But again, rest assured that I'm doing the best I can to prepare you and providing a number of opportunities for you to show me how you know that material. Okay? Cool. All right, so as this is warming up, I'm going to go back over your lecture notes. Remember, I first go over your lecture notes, and that's what you have mostly at home. All right. What are the 5 major world religions?
5.
Islam, Christianity, Judaism,
Hinduism,
Buddhism. Of those 5, what's the largest?
Christianity.
What country has the largest number of Christians?
U.S.
U.S. Which is the fastest growing?
Islam.
What country has the largest number of Muslims?
Indonesia.
Indonesia. Good. Of those 5, which 3 are monotheistic religions? Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Which one of those is the parent religion? Judaism. Of those 5, which is the oldest religion?
Hinduism.
Of any religion, what's the oldest? Hinduism. Good. Hinduism, largest number of Hindus are found where? India. Oh. The largest number of Jews found where? U.S. Largest number of Buddhists found? China. Buddhism is an outgrowth of what older religion? Hinduism. Okay, good. Then, we talked a little bit about the sacred and the profane. Could someone get the lights and I'll turn up the skylights. Chance to see your notes. Okay. Does anybody have problems seeing the notes to write stuff down? Is that enough light? Anybody having problems? Okay. All right, so I'm going over your notes. Again, remember, this is a guide to what's important from the previous lecture, the things you're liable to see on quizzes and on the midterm at this point. Okay, so Durkheim's theory of religion. What is religion for Durkheim? Any set of beliefs that does what? That divides the world into 2 spheres. What are the 2 spheres?
Sacred and profane.
Sacred and profane. What's profane? Everyday life. What's sacred? Intense experience, high emotional involvement. For Durkheim, what creates those intense emotions? Ritual, which then explains what he means by that weird statement, in religion, society worships what? Itself, which means it is society. More accurately, the group in ritual that's creating the emotions in back of religion. Is that clear? This is a little more complicated. Okay. And any questions about these quick points I went over? So just reviewing the main points last time. Did not yet talk about the functions of religion in this class. In that case, all right. Religion is a cultural universal. It is found in every society we know, at least some form. But not the same, obviously. There's incredible differences between monotheism, polytheism, especially non-theistic religions. Sociobiologists, some have actually made the argument that there is an instinct for religion. Durkheim's not convinced. That's silly. What he argues instead is the reason why religion is so widespread is that it's so useful. In other words, it performs a large number of what?
Function.
Functions. Remember, Durkheim is the father of functionalism. This approach to society is very, very concerned about functions, order, stability. And that's exactly what religion does for society, according to Durkheim. As different as those beliefs may be from society to society, they share the function of making things orderly and stable. So what kind of functions might religion perform? What good does it do? Why is it there? Any ideas? Yeah.
Provides comfort.
Comfort. Look, let's be honest. We are all worms meat. Quote Shakespeare. What does that mean? We're all going to friggin' die. I know at 18 or 19 years old, you don't think you will. And even worse is not merely confronting our own mortality, but losing someone you're deeply attached to. Now again, maybe you're young enough, you've never had that experience, but just wait. You will. Now, in the face of death and our own mortality, religion offers comfort. Good. What else? What other functions does it perform? And that's why it's also ubiquitous. That's why it's a cultural universal, is because I don't care what the culture is, sooner or later, you're going to die. Yes?
It provides a structure towards morality.
Ah, good. Yeah. I mean, very definition. It is the inculcation. It is the realization of morality. It is morality. Why does every society need a moral code? Why is that so important? Why is it so functional? Yeah, keep order in society. Let's be honest about human beings. We are still animals. And our basic human nature is also a basic animal nature that must be controlled. Read a little bit of Freud, and you will hear a lot of that conversation. For Freud, civilization arises out of the need to hold animal being under control. Controlling our sexuality. Honestly, as a species, human beings are pretty horny. And that's functional in a state of nature where it's hard to reproduce. In a state of nature, you got lions and tigers and bears. How often can we reproduce? At best, maybe every 9 months. But that's not always happening. Under starvation, if you don't have a lot of food, it's difficult to reproduce, harder to get pregnant, and then starvation. Animals, hard for human beings to survive. So there's a drive inside of us, an animal nature towards highly sexuality. But then civilization. In a large society, that's a disaster if we give into it. And religion controls our sexual drives, our aggressions, highly functional, to regulate our morality, to regulate our basic drive. Other functions religion performs. Other functions. Yes. Exactly. One of the fundamental notions that Durkheim talked about as a form of solidarity. Remember the two of them, mechanical and organic. Mechanical solidarity is shared beliefs like religion. And for most of human history, until the modern era,